Well, we have, it's right at 4 o'clock and we're missing a few people, but I think we just get started and welcome to the first meeting of the Recreation Working Group. I sent around a schedule. Just to reiterate it again, you know, this is a voluntary group with no charge account. And so we're here to, you know, our charge is 2 years. To think about this 5-year plan that will be adopted by the Army Corps sometime soon. And the process that goes on with it is that once the Corps adopts this overarching plan, then the Ohio River Basin Alliance has an opportunity to say yes or no or whatever. And hopefully they've reviewed it quite a number of times, and so I think it should be pro forma. And then it goes to Orsanco, and so up and down the lines. So welcome to the committee. There are 6 other working groups, and part of our purpose today is to really hear from Harry Stone, who is the titular head of the overall group. And he's going to sort of provide an overview of what is occurring with ORBA and with this planning process. And we'll also have an opportunity to go forward and ask him questions. So, you know, any clarifying issues, because sometimes I find that once you start on a long-term project, all the end parts are not exactly known, but it's better if we have a pretty good idea of where we want to be in 2 years. I did send out an agenda, and we're getting up on introductions pretty soon. But one more thing is that this is an exclusive group because we've all been approved by a distinguished board of overseers of the Ohio River Basin Alliance. And so every single one of your names was read off, and we talked about each person. And so the 20-person or almost 20-person steering board unanimously approved all of your requests to participate in this work, and we wish to thank you. A final piece with that is Harry is going to create certificates of acknowledgement that you've been approved that can be used for any needs that you might have with your supervisors and on. So it's an official appointment. Harry, anything else that you want to sort of say about that can't wait till your time?
Nope.
All right. Well, I'll start off, and you know, my name's David Wicks, and I have 1 minute. I'm going to try to keep to it. I'm a co-chair of the Ohio River Recreation Trail. I'm a retired educator who spent 32 years within the Jefferson County Public Schools as a environmental education person, coordinator. I'm a great believer in professional associations. I was president of our North American Association for Environmental Ed and president of the Kentucky Association for Environmental Ed, and on and on and on. I'm also very involved in land trusts, and so I keep myself busy in my retirement. And it's a pleasure to serve on the ORBA's steering committee now and to help facilitate this process. So if you can go through and unmute yourself and then mute yourself back up when you're done. So Harry, why don't you go and we'll just work our way around this thing.
Sure, I'm Harry Stone, and I'm actually the vice chairperson of ORBA at this point. I will move into the ORBA chair seat in October, well, at the end of September. I have served as the Orsanco ORBA non-federal sponsor lead on the Planning Assistance to States initiative that we have done with the Corps of Engineers. Prior to coming to ORBA, I did some academic time. I have a multidisciplinary PhD in ecology, political science, and economics, MBA, and Masters of Science from Vanderbilt in plant physiology. And I've worked on some interesting things like the Ohio River Basin climate change adaptation strategy, harmful algal blooms in Grand Lake St. Mary's and Lake Erie, and other things. So that's me.
All right. Brewster?
Hello, folks. My name is Brewster Rhodes. I live in Cincinnati most of the time. I'm up at Lake Erie right now, as a matter of fact, paddling. But I have spent most of my career, I'm now retired, running campaigns for candidates and ballot issues in Cincinnati area, Northern Kentucky mostly, and worked for 12 years for 2 different Democratic governors in Ohio, and then finished up as the executive director of Green Umbrella, the Regional Sustainability Alliance in Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. So I have the pleasure of working with Jack Sutton and Dave Wicks as a co-chair of the Ohio River Recreation Trail. I'm very active on the board of Adventure Crew, which is one of the founding partners to help get that project off the ground, and remains a key motor force behind it. And I'm also involved in a variety of other nonprofit adventures. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be collaborating with you all and to reconnect with some people like Riza. We'll hear from you in a minute, but great to see you all. Thank you for participating.
How about David?
Hi, I'm David Rutter. I'm a senior environmental planner at OKI, manager of water quality program here, and I've been involved from the beginning on the Ohio River Recreation Trail. As a part of that, I'm a fairly new transplant to the Cincinnati region. Came from Central Ohio, where I was involved in water planning there as well. And just glad to be here.
All right, Jack Sutton.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm a retired park guy, live in Aurora, Indiana, but spent most of my professional career with Great Parks of Hamilton County, which is the metro park serving this greater Cincinnati area, in the last 17 years of that career as their CEO and executive director. But right now I'm involved with a variety of things. I'm involved with 2 different land trusts, helping with land acquisition strategies both in Southwest Ohio and Southeast Indiana. Doing a little bit of consulting work. I just finished a trail report for Dearborn County, their local economic development group, trying to help push the trail system here in Dearborn County a little bit stronger. So involved in a lot of things, grew up along the Ohio River, spent most of my life in the Ohio River Basin, if you will, except for about 6 years when I lived down in Georgia. But looking forward to working with all of you.
All right, Victor.
Okay, so I'm kind of a transplant too, but a little more further removed. Most of my career of 30 years has been west of the Mississippi River. I'm the manager of Ohio River Islands National Wildlife Refuge. Have been an active paddler and outdoor recreation type oriented person. So this kind of falls into my wheelhouse, and it's taken me a little while to kind of get up to speed on managing this type of refuge. There's really very few others like this refuge, if any others really. So it's kind of unique, and I've got kind of a steep learning curve, but I'm enjoying my time here so far, and look forward to trying to contribute what I can to the group.
By the way, Victor just and the islands in the Ohio River Refuge just opened a 362-mile kayak challenge adventure featuring the 22 islands of the refuge. It's exciting. Seth?
Hey everybody, my name is Seth Wheat. My title is the Director of Tourism Development for the Kentucky Department of Tourism. In reality, what I do is I focus on the adventure tourism initiatives for the department, the sports tourism initiatives, and then a lot of other duties as assigned, as everybody gets into nowadays. One of the main focuses we have is the Kentucky Trail Town program. We've put together a statewide master trail plan. We're working on updating that, and I'm a member of a number of regional partnerships like the Ohio River Recreational Trail. I do a lot of work with Russell Clark and the projects he works on, and just try to help out in any way we can to facilitate and get people hooked up to resources. I'm happy to be a part of this group.
Thank you, Seth. Russ?
Good afternoon. I'm Russ Clark, landscape architect with the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Systems Program. I'm stationed in Kentucky at Mammoth Cave. I originally came from Michigan. In the private practice world, I had a consulting company for years in Michigan, but I've joined the Park Service 9 years ago and thoroughly enjoy assisting communities realize their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. And Brad?
Hi, so I'm Brad Collett. I'm an associate professor at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee, a bit of an outlier here amongst this group, though I do have roots in Cincinnati. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, in Blue Ash, and spent time growing up on the Ohio and paddling on the Little Miami with Boy Scouts and that sort of thing as well. But what brings me to this group is I'm also the director of the Tennessee Riverline Partnership, and it was from one of my design studios 4 years ago that the vision for the Tennessee Riverline originated. And since we've been working on developing a robust consortium that includes the National Park Service and the Tennessee Valley Authority and other state and local agencies that are working to make this vision become a reality. It's a vision for a 652-mile water trail from Knoxville to Paducah along the Tennessee River's entire reach. But at a more strategic level, it's a project designed to reintroduce a region to its storied river and to its legacy, and thereby challenging them to rethink that relationship and unlock the river's latent economic and public health potentials. We've had a very successful last 12 months, and just recently we closed our application period for our first ever cohort of Tennessee River Towns program applicants, and we were pleased to share that we had 17 communities or 17 applicants that represent actually 33 communities around the river's reach express interest in being a part of that. So we're working through that now, and we'll be announcing our enrollees in the middle of October.
Sounds great. You know, one other thing about Brad is he is a keynote speaker at the Ohio River Summit coming up in September 30th, October 1st, and October 2nd. Looking forward to it. Risa.
Hey everybody, my name is Risa Shimoda. I am in Tacoma Park, Maryland, just outside of DC, and I serve as the executive director of the River Management Society. So it's a national group of folks who are federal and state river land manager planners, advocates, lawyers, fluvial geomorphologists, so scientists, students, and academics who have one thing in common, and that is fresh moving water and the management of those who use them. So more on the user side and not so much on treatment, wastewater, and kind of the in-between line is water quality as users get involved in that, in initiatives to improve them or, you know, fix whatever might be, what might be wrong. So that's what I do mainly for work. I'm a consultant, so I do some other projects. I'm working on a capacity study for the Lower Delaware. I'm working with NASBLA, the State Law Association of Boating Law Administrators, on a waterway management guide update. A third edition. The second edition was in 2004. So a variety of water related things. And then personally, I'm a kayaker, and I got my first role in the high school in Hamilton County, and cut my teeth on the Little Miami and when I lived in Cincinnati. And that's sort of how I know Brewster. So my roots are definitely in Ohio, and my best friends and the people who sent me into the river for the very first time are in and around Cincinnati. I also have competed a lot and involved in USA Freestyle Kayaking, the International Whitewater Hall of Fame, as a kind of advocate and organizer. And I'll just have you know, we just posted the rules for our virtual freestyle national championships. It's on flat water. You have to video yourself for a minute, and the winners of each class gets a roll of toilet paper. So whether it's work or play, have been very involved in paddling and the river since 1979. Thrilled to be here.
Thank you, Risa. And by the way, just to let everybody know, you too can join the River Management Society. It's a wonderful organization, and has a national scope, and we're pleased to have you. Bridget.
Hi, my name is Bridget Taylor. I'm an environmental scientist at Orsenco. So I do water quality, so I work in the bi-monthly and clean metals water quality program that collects samples along the dams every 2 months. And then my background is in geology and GIS. So yeah, happy to be here.
Well, that's wonderful. It's great to have you. Lizzie.
Hey, my name is Lizzie Hessick. I work for the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. That is in Pennsylvania. And one of my roles at the council is the statewide water trail program manager. So we have 28 water trails that have been designated as state water trails in Pennsylvania. And in the Ohio Basin, the full Allegheny, the Monongahela, the Youghiogheny, and the Ohio, among some other smaller ones like the French Creek, are all involved in this program. So I'm excited to be here to represent the Pennsylvania waterways and the people who recreate on them.
Well, why, thank you very much. And it's, I think it's so important that we have good representation from around the entire basin, because that's what ORBA is, and that's what this plan really is about. So welcome, Lizzie.
I spent a weekend in Cincinnati for an academic conference, but other than that, I haven't been west of Pennsylvania, so it's pretty exciting.
You haven't been west of Pennsylvania, and never intended.
Why would you leave Pennsylvania?
I think we should have a field trip, road trip at some time. Harry, I hope there's funds for road trips, We also have a guest here that is a very important person, and that is Heather Mayfield, who is co-chair or chair of another one of these working groups. And I just wanted to give Heather a chance to introduce herself.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, David. My name is Heather Mayfield. I'm director of the Foundation for Ohio River Education. We are a nonprofit supporting organization of Orsenco. And of course, as our name implies, our focus is education within the basin. We have a floating classroom program for the Ohio River and work with a lot of the schools in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, and Southeast Indiana region to get students out on the water and assessing water quality through a variety of different programs. And then we also work a lot with other agencies within our region to outreach to the general public. This weekend we just had a great harmful algal bloom workshop for farmers and landowners. And pond management, or that focused on pond management. So that's kind of an example of some of the other outreach programs we do. I also work with Orsenco's harmful algal bloom program, and do a lot of the taxonomy from the samples that are collected from the different fixed monitoring stations along the length of the Ohio River. So excited to be co-chairing the Knowledge to Inform Decisions group, and we obviously have a lot of overlap in our charters and a lot of good opportunities to collaborate. So looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Heather. And we have Jerry James joined us. He was driving earlier, and now looks like he's at home.
Yeah, I was at the county clerk's office trying to handle some car business, adulting. So yeah, Jerry James, founder of the Explore Kentucky Initiative, which is like an environmental and outdoor social enterprise, kind of like jack of all trades, outdoor recreation, paddle sports, you name it, trail stuff. I'm also the ACA state director for Kentucky, which is something David wanted me to really hone in on. I've been involved with the ACA since 2015, stand-up paddleboard instructor, level 1, canoe instructor, level 2. I also have been really honing in and growing paddle sports fitness and paddle sports racing across the region in Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia. Yeah, do a lot of stuff. Know a lot of cool people here, and I'm excited to be part of this group. Yeah. Oh yeah. And the big thing, my focus is on as I approach my work in it's intersectional work, and so focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, Not a lot of people do that, but it's super important to think about how these things intersect. You know, not to talk long, but when you think about paddle sports, you think about there's also structural racism that has existed. You know, in like Louisville, you know, if you look at where the access to the river is, it's in the mostly, you know, affluent areas, and then you look in the mostly Black and low income areas, there's not a lot of access to river. So, you know, those are social determinants that determine how people, you know, interact with water. So that's kind of how I've developed and approached my work over the past few years, and that's been growing. Something I've been growing and developing. So yeah.
Well, we appreciate your work, Jerry, and just to let everybody know, in part because of him and because of Russ Clark and the state of Kentucky, they just opened up. Well, they just put in. It's quite fascinating. A brand new, fully serviced boat ramp in Western Louisville, in the sort of the middle of Shawnee Park. And today they built the ramp on shore and pushed it with bulldozers down into the river. So it was quite exciting. I'll share videos they made of it. So it's just a wonderful system for our city and our access to all of the folks that live in our community. Tremendous fishing opportunities and tremendous boating opportunities. There's a plan that they want to work with us on developing a $10 million Shawnee Outdoor Learning Center in the Western Louisville, and that will be featured actually at the on the Ohio River Basin Conference coming up on October 1st. We have Russ Barnett joining us. Russ, just to let you know, you owe 20 minutes on the theory of recreation. No, who are you, Russ, in 30 seconds or less?
I'm Russ Barnett.
He did good. I co-teach with Russ, and I have taught many classes with Russ over the past many years. We've taken students to China, to the Everglades, and now we're focusing on the Ohio River. And he's a wonderful researcher at the University of Louisville. So he's sort of a behind-the-scenes guy in many ways. We have a couple things we want to do today, and we want to make sure we get a good handle on what we're about and how we work with the other groups. And so Harry has agreed to give an overview of the whole process. And I have two favors to ask as you're listening to him. If you have ideas or suggestions or anything else, use the chat feature. We are recording this and we record the chats too. So, you know, chat away. And at the same time, listen to Harry. If everybody could mute their selves besides Harry, you're on, Harry.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay. First of all, I thank you all. This is an impressive group, and I truly am honored for this opportunity to share some thoughts about the Ohio River Basin-wide strategy, and specifically about the nature-based recreation working group and some of the things that we're hoping for. In the next few minutes, I'll cover a little bit about our vision, an overview of the planning that's been going on and kind of where we are with that. I'll talk about the working groups and the charters, which I'm titling Get to Work, because this is where it all really starts happening. And then I'll be glad to answer any questions as best I can. So first of all, to make sure we're all on the same page, when we're talking about the Ohio River Basin, we are talking about the entire watershed from southwestern New York all the way down to the northeast corner of Mississippi. It includes the Tennessee River and the Cumberland River, as well as the Ohio River and all of the tributaries. There are 25 million people who live in this basin, and we have 2,500 miles of navigable waterways. It's an important basin, and outdoor recreation is an important part of this important basin. the Outdoor Industry Association did a study, and they found in the major states in the Ohio River Basin, just looking at those, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee, West Virginia, there were 757,000 direct jobs with wages of about $24 billion. So this is a big deal, and it's a big opportunity. The vision we have is really to take advantage of what we believe is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to enrich lives in the basin by expanding our basin, our nature-based recreation. And a quote from the Outdoor Industry Association, investments in outdoor recreation on public lands and waters earn compounding returns in the form of healthier communities, healthier economies, and healthier people. And our vision is to take the highly fragmented nature-based recreation economy that is in the Ohio River Basin and begin to tie that together by water and terrestrial trails so that we can achieve these compounding returns. And we believe that we can deliver on this, but it is going to take a basin-wide effort. Let's see. Okay. One of the key points is that this is not something that ORBA is just doing on its own. The truth of the matter is you all already have this underway. So we're not starting from scratch. And what is really envisioned is that the working group can provide the opportunity for collaboration and cooperation among the various efforts that are out there already, so that we can pull all those together in a coordinated way. And so how we will get there is to coordinate and leverage the existing organizations and efforts, engage the river communities, and hearing from, I believe it was Brad talking about the work in the Tennessee River. I mean, that's so perfect. Increasing outdoor recreation access and inclusion. And as I hear Jerry talking about that, that's important. Being able to increase inclusion so that we can expand those who are involved in outdoor recreation. And then in this whole process, we want to generate overwhelming regional support. And then as appropriate, we'll be able to speak as a basin in a unified way to our Ohio River Congressional Caucus. So a bit about how we got here. Back in 2009, there was a summit held by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, ORSANCO, and the U.S. EPA. And what was recognized is that the Ohio River Basin got left out of a lot of things because it did not speak with a unified voice. And so coming out of that, they had a vision that of developing a collaborative strategy that would enable the Ohio River Basin to speak with one voice, thereby gaining leverage, influence, and funding. And so at that time, the Ohio River Basin Alliance, ORBA, was created to pursue that vision. And over the last 10 years, we have had collaborative summits that have occurred in 6 of the basin states, and we've worked on a number of projects. But one of the big exciting things that has happened recently is in 2019, we were able to get a Planning Assistance to States initiative. And this was done with ORSANCO, the Ohio River Valley Water Sanitation Commission, an 8-state commission with federal commissioners as well, serving as ORBA's fiscal sponsor. And the partnership was done with the Corps of Engineers, about a $400,000 project, and the state of Kentucky came in with significant funding, $150,000 to help match that project. So at the highest level where we are in that planning is we have 6 Ohio River basin-wide goals. They are healthy and productive ecosystems, abundant clean water, world-class nature-based recreation opportunities, the nation's most valuable river transportation and commerce corridor, reliable flood control and risk reduction, and knowledge and education to inform decisions. So one of the things that David asked me if I would do is talk about the interconnectivity of these various goals. And so what you see here are, in pink are the goals, and in blue are a few of the objectives that we're going after. And I've put in some of the interconnections between these working groups and the goals. And so the point here isn't for you to really look at this other than to get the sense that these things are all highly connected. So while the fishable, swimmable waters is an objective under the abundant clean water goal, obviously there are interconnections with nature-based recreation, with ecosystem restoration, with informed decisions, actually with all of them. And so our, as we think about the objectives that are within our area of responsibility, there's fully an expectation that there will be sharing across our working groups and collaboration among working groups. These cannot and should not be silos. So to the working group and getting to work. For each of the goals, the steering committee is looking to come up with an effective, energized working group that is chartered by the steering committee to implement the plan. We have selected 6 outstanding working group leaders. I'm just honored to have these folks working with us. They have the expertise and commitment to lead these efforts. And now we're putting together the working group members who are appointed by the steering committee, and they're the folks that have strategic interest and expertise. And we're looking to make sure that we have sufficient folks to be able to realize the plan. So within the working group charters, we have some routine stuff like expectations of meetings and minutes and reports. More importantly, the working groups are Orbit's liaison to the leadership of every strategic action within their goal. And we are also looking for you to deliver action plans for the strategic actions. We look to the working groups to be the experts who will advise the steering committee on what needs to be included in summits. And then we will be looking for an annual progress report for each strategic action. The goal for this working group is to enrich the quality of life for people and recreation-based economies by maintaining and enhancing riverine, lake, and wetland-associated recreation within the basin. And the first objective is from 2021 to 2025 to grow the basin's outdoor recreation economy at a rate that exceeds the national average. And there are 6 objectives under this, 6 strategic actions. The first deals with getting funding to establish and interconnect multi-purpose terrestrial and water trails, increase access, create jobs. The second deals with collaboration among water trails to engage a variety of stakeholders in the promotion of outdoor recreation with a real emphasis on getting new participants. Encouraging mayors along the river to collaborate on strategies for their area. With the Army Corps of Engineers to look at lock houses and grounds to see if there are some that are no longer in use that could be used for river access, camping, day use, education, and so forth. To advocate for policies and funding supportive of fishing, hunting, and paddle sport education. and to pursue funding and organizational structure for a comprehensive water trail on the Ohio River and tributaries. The second objective deals with basin-wide recreation. Essentially, it's by 2025, create a basin-wide communication plan for recreation that encompasses recreation safety as well as benefits of public health and quality of life. And we have got 3 strategic actions under this. The first involves pursuing funding, and I would add interest, for expansion in geographic coverage and marketing of a GIS-based digital guide with comprehensive information about the basin water trails, to facilitate basin-wide collaboration, to coordinate outreach to the general public on our trails, our events, everything that's available, and make this available not only to the usual suspects, but to historically vulnerable populations and non-English speaking peoples. And finally, to advocate for funding to locate and safely remove low-head dams throughout the basin. As we work on this, we've already said that we don't see this being a silo, but rather working across the various goal working groups. But it's important for you to know some of the Ohio River Basin's guiding principles. And these including all Ohio River Basin stakeholders. We want a lot of engagement. Leverage the existing authorities' resources and capabilities to accomplish ORBA's goals and capitalize on existing collaborations. We don't want to reinvent anything that's already out there. Rather, we want to figure out what role ORBA can play in helping bring things together, move them along, and coordinate. And then finally, do not infringe or impede or infringe on the mission of any other organization. Again, ORBA should be a value add, not an in place of or a distraction from the things that are already happening. So with that quick overview, I would be glad to answer any questions. Just a couple of links here. The Ohio River Basin Alliance.com takes you to our website, which is on the Corps of Engineers site in the Huntington District. And then we have our symposium link. David was talking about some of that. And I will stop sharing.
Let's open it up for questions. Just to let everybody know, we are going to spend the rest of the time on those 9 strategic actions. And so we can talk about those in detail in a minute or two. But are there any questions about the other working groups? They're quite fascinating. The ecosystem group is chaired by the National Wildlife Federation. The transportation group is chaired by the Inland Waters Group. So very long established projects that we're interacting with. To me, it's fascinating because, the Corps has done Ohio River plans for a long, long time. And this is the first time that I know of that it really actively includes recreation in the basin. So any questions for Harry before we jump into the next phase of our meeting?
Very broad brush, the objective of removing all low-head dams, I understand for some recreational we might be creating more recreational opportunities in by restoring fishing. But would we be better off to talk about examining those low-head dams to figure out what the most efficient uses are, including as a renewable energy source?
And the answer to that is definitely yes. And I will say that you as a working group should, I'm not going to say not pay attention to, because that is absolutely not true, but you should use what we have done so far as a framework, and it definitely can be made better. And so I've heard from National Wildlife Federation, for example, wait a minute, sometimes you take out those low-head dams and you do damage to ecosystems. So it's not always good. And other places we've got communities that say, no, this is part of our beautiful waterfalls that we have outside of our restaurants. You know, we don't want it to go. So yeah, absolutely, it requires some work.
I like the overall approach, and most of it was uplifting, but I detect in that one sentence, then it's comes across as a negative that I can see that we have a lot of discussion. So it's more of how you frame that. And so I guess that's just a matter of whoever's working on that particular strategy to kind of think of the words that we're using.
Or we could transfer that goal to Jordan with the National Wildlife Federation.
But Harry, I'd appreciate it if you could, I'd like to have a copy of your presentation so I can mull it over more. We're cruising through it, but it would be very helpful for all of us to have that, quite frankly.
Sounds great. Any other comments?
Yeah, David, I have a question. Maybe this, again, back to Harry, is who is the ultimate audience for this strategic plan? When this work is done 2 years from now or beyond, who is the recipient for this information? Elected officials? Is it the Corps? Who is the audience we're speaking to?
It actually has a broad audience, and so we anticipate it's in the Corps of Engineers quality assurance review right now. We expect to have it within the next couple of weeks. And ORBA, because we're a little bit more flexible as an organization, will probably take the first cut at approval and endorsing it. We anticipate that Orsenco will be taking a look at it and voting endorsement in their next commission meeting. And we're going to be encouraging organizations throughout the basin that say, yeah, we like this, to be signing on to it. And then, so for switching over to the ecological restoration piece, National Wildlife Federation has assigned Jordan to work on this as his job. And so over the next year or so, I mean, the first thing he's doing is beginning to put together a large coalition of NGOs to be supportive of one of their goals, which is ecological restoration initiative for the basin. And then there's science work that's already started and will be continued, looking at what the needs are in the basin for an ecological restoration project. And then coming out of that will be communications to our congressional caucus with the justification and with advocacy. So that's that piece. We have, I'll give one more example and then I'll shut up. But we have, in a very different way with the transportation, when we're talking about river navigation, there's a Inland Waterways Users Board that does a report to Congress on what the needs are. And our chair is the past chair, I say our chair, our leader of that working group was the past chair of the Inland Waterways Users Board. And so there, what we're really doing is much more of a liaison to that group, because they already have done substantial work on what's needed for the basin. And so there we're in much more of a liaison relationship and endorsing what they're wanting for the basin, more or less. So with your group, you've kind of got a deuce mixture. You've got a lot of things that are already going on. And what we want to do is just make sure that for those things that are already well underway, we just want to make sure that we've got a good liaison relationship so that we know how to help them. For other things, you know, it's going to be this group that says, how do we how do we collaborate? How do we coordinate in order to make this bigger than just my individual river, my individual tributary? How do we make it more of a basin-wide vision for recreation and tourism?
I think another answer or another way to think about it also is that some of the projects can be done immediately and working together. Some of them might require significant additional funding. And the example has been brought up many times, even Harry in his talk earlier, that the Great Lakes Initiative has received billions of dollars of dedicated funding for the Great Lakes. The same thing goes with the Chesapeake Bay or the Everglades. And so the intent is to explore the feasibility of having a dedicated funding stream for the Ohio River Basin for all of these initiatives. Is that correct, Harry?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So in 2009, when that summit was held, one of the key things that was being brought up was, while the Great Lakes was organized and was receiving at that time $450 million, which they have gotten, comparable amounts for a decade. The Ohio River Basin, which has very similar problems and some that are even different and bigger, was not even part of the geographic program. And so getting to a geographic program, and I would say on the order of $3 billion over a decade or decade and a half, is part of what we are really hoping for and pushing for.
Answer your question, Jack? Anything else?
Harry, I have a quick question. Objective 1, you mentioned, I'm paraphrasing, this basin to outpace the national average on the outdoor recreation economy. And you mentioned Outdoor Industry Association earlier, so I'm assuming you are going to use their research and their metrics to kind of judge us versus the national average. Is that right?
That's the data that we had used in the planning process. And I think at least part of theirs comes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. So those data for kind of where we are today are there. And my expectation is we would probably follow up with that association to see, to make sure that we can get the data in the future. And it's best I can tell, we can only get it at the county level. I mean, at the state level.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was gearing towards is, I think on one hand, I think they do those national studies every 5 years. So we should do one in like 2022. And I'm sure a lot of you all have some contacts there, and it may be worth reaching out to them to say, hey, we're trying to pull a little, because I need that kind of data too. And you're right, it's statewide, and that's great, but the more you can drill it down, the better off we all are. So as part of a group, we could say, hey, here's a lot of interest. If you all could get us some more targeted information or more targeted data, that might be something we could take to them as they're planning for their next national study.
That sounds great.
Y'all were going to work.
Seth, I have raised to the steering committee that same issue because all of the other working groups have a similar deal that, what is the impact of transportation on the river and what is drinking water's impact? And so I have encouraged the steering committee and the folks at Marshall and Harry to think about a dedicated economic impact. There was one done in 1994 by Miami University that looked at the entire basin. And can another one be done that's above and beyond the outdoor industries piece? I think it's a good one. I think in part it's based around sales and it's an interest. It's a retailer organization. That's what it is. And so can we get an independent economic analysis of all these different aspects of it? And I think that's a larger issue, and because that's our goal, is to increase the economic activity. We have to know what our baseline is, and right now it is that national study. Thank you very much, Harry. What we want to do in the next probably 10 minutes, and oh, by the way, just to let you know, Harry is very responsive. If you ever have an independent question, or just send him a note, and he's on that email. I'd like to just go over quickly these 9 goals again, and have anybody sort of chime up when you hear if you have a question, and then we're going to do a quick poll at the end. This poll is really purely for interest. It's not for anything else. That first goal that Harry talked about was really this greenways and blueways. The terminology has changed a little bit, even though the ideas are the same. But it's really to think about, is there feasibility for looking for funding for a comprehensive greenway and blueway, very similar to what UT Knoxville is doing down in the Tennessee River, and TVA helps them. UT Knoxville does a lot. I think Brad puts in a lot of extra time. So that's sort of greenways and blueways, and we've had a little bit of conversation with a guy named Chuck Flink with Greenways Inc. And he is interested in exploring some of these possibilities. Are there any comments or questions? Just speak on up. I'm going to go to the next one. Then our second one really is this water-related recreation and directory. I sort of made up these titles to sort of try to summarize it, because I'm a product-oriented person, and like to have a deliverable as well as thinking out of the box. And so as we, sort of the first step, if we want to encourage collaboration, we have to know who's there. And from my information, I've not found a comprehensive Ohio River Basin analysis of all of the different organizations. This might be a great example of a collaboration with the education group, because they have that same charge of identifying all of the educationally related organizations. And so there's a tremendous overlap with it. Number 3 is...
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
To what extent are these focus groups descriptions set in stone at this point? The descriptions themselves, yeah.
These descriptions, these come from the previous version of the plan that the Army Corps now is debating somewhere between Cincinnati and Washington. And so the exact verbiage might change a little bit. We also have, as a working group, so if you choose to say, I'm interested in this area, the first thing that we have to do is to really look at what's written and to say, is that practical? So we have that authority to amend the items how we see fit, but we want to try to live up to the initial description. But so don't be taken by the individual words. How about that?
Excellent.
The next one I call it a Rivertown focus, very similar to what Brad is doing. The National Park Service is doing something similar on the Ohio River in a scaled back version, but really thinking about how we can support, be it a trail town like what Kentucky does, like what Seth does. How can, what type of support does that need? Or can we think about it on the rivers? What can we learn from what Tennessee is doing, and can that be applied to the Kentucky River? And so I call that a Rivertown focus, but in reality, that's another one of the discussion items eventually, is we're called nature-based recreation. ORBA is water-related. I tend to be more water-related. You know, and I love bicycling, but I'm still water-related. With nature-based, it's more inclusive. But I think when we look at most of the recommendations that have come through the core and through ORBA, they tend to be focused more on water, but that's an independent that we can add to this if we want to. This is another one that's sort of my particular interest, and it's vacant federal, state, and lock houses up and down the Ohio River. There were 52 of these built between, you know, late 1800s, early 1900s, all replaced by brand new dams. And they're also on the Kentucky River. They're also on, you know, a variety of other rivers. There's old, you know, federal and state land. One of the National Park Service guidelines says, you know, ideally you have a campground every 15 miles. And so can we partner? And to me, it's an exciting thing that the Army Corps is really saying, collaborate with them to have more places like Thomas More Biological Research Station or Shiloh Park. You know, the next one really is fishing and hunting and paddle sport education. And so it's sort of how can we sort of help the River Management Society with their certificate program that's just, I find fascinating. I hope we can find a university to become, because right now the Ohio River Basin does not have a university with one of these River Management Society certificate programs. How can we encourage more work with the American Canoe Association? And at the same time, the majority of people who use our rivers are fishermen. And so how can we help Paul Wilkes in Kentucky's case, but how can we interact with them and have a collaborative process? Something like just what Lisa has, and this is an example of Ohio River focused piece that could be different. You know, it could be a basin in this, just like Pennsylvania has a statewide support for water trails. Maybe we need a Ohio River Basin support for water trails, or maybe the individual states can do enough. That's that funding piece. This is another fascinating one for me as well. I'm a GIS guy, and so we have these digital guides, and OKI has done a tremendous job in doing their digital guide, or the digital guide for our part of the river. Victor is doing something similar up in the upper part of the Ohio River, and certainly Brad has done an amazing piece down on the Tennessee River. So how these pieces work together, and we can have select, or you know, a more robust, easier accessible system to the average user. Oops. Then we have, as Harry mentioned, public outreach to support outdoor recreation. By, you know, and we want to have a communication plan and increase programs. And just in Louisville's case, you know, some, you know, programs are community focused. I think what Heather has done with her basin-wide piece is fascinating, but it still comes down to local. So I'm just fascinated with our development of a brand new research and education center in Shawnee Park here in our west end of Louisville. So I think that fits right into that one. And that's the last one that Russ talked about, was removing low-head dams. And so we're totally open for if people are interested in working on that one. That's our goals. Are there any discussions? I have a poll here. Oh, here we have two new people. I'm sorry, I didn't see you earlier there, Perry and Trish. So before we jump in on our goals, are there any questions, any thoughts, anything we want to bring up before we do this, before we have Perry and Trish introduce themselves? Because they just came on.
David, I'd like to discuss for a second, the idea of getting people connected to the Ohio River. So we have already large festivals on some of the smaller towns, some of the larger towns. Cincinnati has their River Fest. We have our something similar in Louisville with the hike, bike, and paddle. We have concerts on the river, and all of these things, we have to understand that for a lot of people, even if they live on the Ohio River, they don't know much about the Ohio River, and they're really not connected to the Ohio River. So David and I just started a class, and we had our students already talk about the Ohio River, and for some of them, even if they lived right on the river, they really didn't know much about it, and they really weren't connected to it. But it would seem to me that maybe part of the goal would be to help collaborate between all of these different festivals, similar to other communities where they get the synergism of a larger, be able to reach a larger group of people, and they can provide timetables so people can understand there's a whole bunch of events all up and down the river. But we really haven't talked about that, and it's really not in your objectives, but it could be and should be probably as one of your objectives, just to get that support that you know you're going to need in the end.
Russ is just creating another committee. It's a pleasure. But no, I think it could really fit maybe in that public outreach piece. And maybe we'll find as we go forward, we need to create another working part of our group. You know, I'm working now with a fascinating group called the Forecastle Foundation. And they have, I don't know, 80,000 people come to a music festival that's dedicated to environmental understanding, and really it's a music festival on Louisville's waterfront. And they reinvest all their profits into local environmental projects. And so, you know, how can we link those festivals? You're right, it's a big one. Thank you, Russ.
I guess my main point was that we keep using the word recreation, but typically I don't think of recreation in the same way as some of these festivals, or even Louisville's Thunder Over Louisville, which is the largest firework display in the world. I don't think of it as recreation, but it's dependent on the river, and the whole event and the whole air show that goes with it are all right on the Ohio River. So it's an opportunity for us to, when we attract large crowds like that, to communicate and to get people to understand how the Ohio River links all of us up and down the basin.
Sounds great. Perry, who are you? And sorry for not having you introduce yourself earlier.
My apologies for not being here at the start, everyone. Yes, I am Perry Thomas. My title is Salt River Basin Coordinator with the Division of Water. I also happen to be the president of the North American Lake Management Society, and was called into a meeting that overlapped with this one. So I apologize for that. But I'm glad to be seeing you all here today, and I look forward to participating on this committee.
There are a few lakes in Kentucky and in the Ohio River Basin, aren't there? Trish.
Hi, David, and everybody else. Again, my apologies as well. I am on Central Time and did not think about that until just recently. I'm actually on the Wisconsin River right now, having just ended my paddling for this summer. I saw David put that in my bio. I paddled the Ohio River from Pittsburgh to Louisville in June and July, and then I paddled about 170 miles on the Wisconsin River just in the last couple weeks, and I'm at the house I grew up in central Wisconsin. So I'm just an avid river person. It's in my blood, and an educator, retired educator working on education reform in Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Trish. You know, it's a fascinating deal that Russ brings up also is, you know, while I think Trish is a fascinating example of a diehard paddler who loves getting out on the river and sharing it, reading some of Wendell Berry's books or Harlan Hubbard's, I just found out that the University of Louisville has every journal page written by Harlan Hubbard. And so you could go down in the bottom of the library and flip through his handwriting journals. It's quite amazing. And so that's recreation to me as well. So let's really take a wide definition of recreation, you know, reading about the river, listening to music by the river, watching birds. You know, maybe there was even a guy named Sid Arthur who sat by the river and smiled a lot, and so contemplated. So Russ, let's do that. I have a poll here. This is a challenge here for everybody. And so this poll is pretty open-ended. It's pretty simple. It just says yes, maybe, and no. And this is anonymous right now. I will get the final report eventually, you know, when I finish the email, because we're recording this, by the way. These are our minutes. So the chat is our minutes, this video is our minutes, and these polls are our minutes. And so I'm asking if you could spend a couple minutes just sort of going through and picking out 1, 2, or 3 of these actions that, yes, you want to work on it. Maybe you might want to work on it. It depends on who else is on there. You might want to, or it could be time. And no, I just don't have the time. Doesn't mean you're not interested. It's just because I go by a thing called under promise and over deliver. But at the same time, this is a working group. And so no freeloaders. So just go ahead and put down your thoughts. So far, we've had 4 people vote. So just take a couple minutes. All 9 of them have a piece on there. Don't forget, you have to say no if you don't want to think about it. To submit your answers, you have to answer every question. Give me a fingers up when you're done. We have a couple more. That's fine. Take your time. My wife is a 3rd grade teacher, and she says there's a thing called wait time, which I'm terrible at. You know, like you're supposed to give people a chance to think instead of just act. Anybody else need more time? And so we'll end polling here and share the results. So we have, as we look through this, working on greenways, we have a big group interested in that. Water related, sort of this directory and program support, 6 definite, 6 maybes, 2 who say no. Here we have working with river towns, 9 people, maybe 3. We have vacant lands, 5 and 4. We have fishing and hunting, 5 and 6. Funding for water trails, 5 and 4. Interested in working on digital guides, for the rivers is 7 and 3. Public outreach, 6, and low head dams, 3. So what I'll do is I will take all those things down, and in the minutes, sort of list everybody's names. We've had a few people who've had to leave and 2 people who couldn't attend, and we'll try to get in touch with those folks. It's 5:10, and we're almost done with that section right there. Any comments, any thoughts? I was quite surprised. I personally thought we might have ended up with 3 or 4 of the objectives that we're working on. It seems like to me we have enough people to do all of them. And so the next phase of this is thinking about if you want to be a committee chair, but that's not for today. The next item on the agenda is Heather. And Heather, you know, you talked a little bit about your commitment to doing collaborative work with the Education and Knowledge Group. Is there anything else you want to add for the good of the order?
I don't think so. I mean, our Knowledge Informed Decisions group has a pretty extensive charge of action items, but I think just a few just general overarching things that kind of come to mind is that both of our groups are really interested in reaching vulnerable populations. We also want to try to reach areas within the basin that are considered underserved areas that typically don't have access either to educational programs or recreation opportunities. And we're both really interested in promoting the value of the river, not only I think to the citizens within the basin, but also to decision makers within the basin. And as you guys all know, you know, that's going to be a really important key to being able to effectively advocate for funding. I know that one of your strategic actions was advocating funding for trails and policies that support recreation activities, whether it's traditional recreation or hunting, fishing, that sort of thing. And, you know, both of us are really charged with somehow conveying the value of the river to our citizens and decision makers. And then it becomes a question of, you know, I think Recreation Group has a really wonderful opportunity to connect people through recreation. I think, David, you've said before that education, what is your quote about education, recreation? It's about education is having fun through recreation is learning, is a fun way of learning.
Education really is recreation with a purpose. That all
recreation with
education is recreation with a purpose. That, you know, all learning should be voluntary, and that's where it really happens.
Right. So there's obviously a lot of overlap there. You know, we have really unique opportunities to incorporate education, traditional and non-traditional, and citizen science and research through recreation activities and vice versa. And I think something that our group can provide to your strategic actions as well as kind of through our work is providing that good data that you need to quantify the economic value of the river and infrastructure and things like that. So I'm looking forward to working with you. And other than that, I don't think I have too much to say. I think as we get rolling on this, we'll start seeing even more opportunities where we can synergize.
Thank you. This leads into our next discussion, because on September 30th, which is a Wednesday, which all of you can register now if you so choose. You know, if you just want to participate in the one workshop, I'm not sure what registration is, but it's $25. But you know, if you just want to come for a part of it, do you have to register? You can talk to Dr. Tamara Sluss about that, but it's on the 30th. And one of the reasons why I bring it up is we have now a short time on the agenda to share our work and to talk about our work with the other working groups. So, you know, we'll hear more from Heather and how we interact together. And that virtual piece is still being discussed, the schedule. One thing with that conference, and we would encourage everybody to register for it, but is Wednesday, September 30th, we have, at least as of now, the only in-person project there. And it's called the Celebration of the Ohio River, and it's at our Waterfront Botanical Gardens. And if you want to come down to Louisville, they guarantee a socially distanced plant observation evening talking about water. So it's a nice event. And so I'll be sending out a couple emails about if anybody wants to participate and to sort of help think through what we could present during that time. Next item is September 10th. Dr. Chris Lawrence did a wonderful talk. As I mentioned, it was a 1994 Orsenko article written on the value of the Ohio River. And Chris is thinking about updating it. And so it's what is the value of the river. I'll be talking a little bit about this plan that we just did. And then Dr. Sluss is going to talk in greater length about the symposium, what's going to go on the 30th. So it's a promotional piece for the ORBA and Port Cray meeting. My last piece on here is called Final Comments, and then we have our next meeting. Maybe we could start down at the bottom. Jerry, do you have any thoughts, any comments, any things for the good of the order?
I'm always excited to work, with you, David. You do a lot of great work and help shape my career as a millennial outdoor environmental guy. So I'm excited. The big thing for me is I think it was Heather said, mentioning underserved populations, marginalized populations, is how can we get those folks in the room? Because typically I'm the black face that shows up in a lot of these spaces, and it's there are people out there that are interested in this work, want to be on the water, want to help their communities and stuff like that. And so what organizations can we partner with to get those people in the room so that we can train them up and get them in this cohort? So that's my thought.
All right, thank you, Jerry, and thank you for your work. Brewster, any final comments or thoughts?
Well, first of all, thanks for bringing this very broad cross-section of folks with varying and complementary skills. I think we have a great team here, David, and I think the challenge is going to be how do we focus down on each of these strategic initiatives and come up with very concrete, specific things that could be done, some with the required funding and some that could be done without substantial additional funding beyond what we already have within our organizational control within this network we have here. So I think the challenge is how do we get beyond talking about it, but figuring out what specifically could be done and what the timeline for implementation of those projects would be. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Brewster, and please keep me honest. If I start to wander, pull me back. Trish, any comments, thoughts? You're on mute, Trish.
I like the idea of really getting people to understand the value of the river as a recreational resource and the health and wellness benefits of it, because I hear frequently in and around Pittsburgh on the rivers how, oh my gosh, you get in the rivers, what do you mean what do you do on the rivers? And so there's a lot of misunderstanding of what's available and what a nice resource they can be, I think. So.
All right, thank you, Trish. We'll come back to you, Perry. How about David Rudder?
Nothing to add other than check out the Ohio River Recreation Trail digital guide. Especially those of you that said you were interested in helping to expand the guide up and down the river.
Sounds great. Seth?
Yeah, not much. I think it's a really good set of goals that you outlined for us, David. And I think in groups like this, sometimes you get bogged down in the weeds and arguing over semantics and stuff. But I really like number one and taking a look at it, not just from a linear greenway and blueway thing, but a kind of a holistic look at leveraging public lands and maybe some public access on private lands. Because here in Kentucky, we are, you know, overwhelmingly a private land state, which is fine. But I think we as a state are missing the boat on maybe getting some new places for people to get out and recreate. And I'm all into the hunting and fishing stuff too, you know, on a personal level. So it's a good thing. And then, you know, every time I'm on one of these meetings with Brewster, he's always set up on an outdoor patio, and it looks like he's having a better time than I am. So I got to start living my life a little better. That's it.
Well, it's called retirement, you know, and
What's
there
that?
is life after you work. But one thing for Seth, and everybody here has that same piece. He mentioned Fish and Wildlife, so he's really interacting with Paul Wilkes with Fish and Wildlife. You know, we could have 100 people on this group, and so each person has their own network. And so Seth is really thinking through the contacts with local government that does Land, Water, and Conservation Fund, thinking about the SCORP, you know, our outdoor recreation planning guide, and Fish and Wildlife. And so thank you, Seth.
Yep.
Victor, any final comments?
Get myself off mute there. I'm excited to work with this group of folks. Looks like a very good group of people, got their heart in the right places, and at least in my point of view, I do think that we can, like regarding the river guide, we can probably stitch together what we got going on up here with the kayak challenge, stitch that together with the recreational trail further south, and extend that on up, and I think that'll be fairly easily done. And so I think that's one project that's a kind of a slam dunk. And so there's a lot of things that I'm encouraged to help out if I can, and look forward to proceeding from here.
You know, we had in a previous call with him, he showed me actually the signs. They've already, U.S. Fish and Wildlife have designed the sign for all of the visitor and the day use facilities as they go up and down the river. So it's a kayak challenge. So this Ohio River Trail just doubled in length, you know, as a result of this. So Harry, it's really working well. You know, another piece, and we could go on with Fish and Wildlife, but we talked about the impact of recreation on us. One of the students today said, what is this impact of recreation on wildlife? And creating these ecological corridors, is that really a viable piece, and how these interact with our other working groups? And I'm just so tickled to death that you're here with us, Victor, because it really helps us broaden our view beyond our own personal recreational things. You know, how does it interact? Like, here's another good example. I went with the Kentucky State Nature Preserves Commission, and since 1979, they bought an island in the Ohio River called 6 Mile Island. They bought it in, you know, so 45 years ago, visited it maybe twice. They're sort of not sure how to manage an island. And so I put her in touch with Victor, and hopefully we can learn on how to manage some of these islands, even though it's out of your scope of work, Victor. You know, it's with mile 60, I think mile 599 is that island.
I'm glad to help out however I can, and maybe I can learn something from them as well. So anytime we can collaborate, that's right. Anytime we can collaborate, everybody wins, I think.
Jack?
Yeah, I would like to echo what Brewster said. Congratulations, David, putting such a good group together. It's been a joy meeting everyone, even though it's through Zoom. Maybe someday we'll be able to do it in person. For me, one takeaway, I think this is a great project. I'm always intrigued when I see the statistics from the outdoor industry. And when I share some of those with groups I meet with, especially the business leaders in the room, they start to perk up. So if one of the outcomes from this talks about the economic impact of outdoor recreation in the Ohio River or the Ohio River Basin, I think that'll gain traction in the long term. So keep up the good work, everybody.
Risa?
I agree with the other part of what Brewster said, is that I look forward to identifying what deliverables might be and then getting to it. I said I would help with everything. I'm very interested in all of it. So I look forward to it. And on the topic of what Jerry was talking about a little bit, you know, changing not even decades, hundreds of years of cultural issues is really difficult. But starting on that path is something that this group probably could do. You know, it's difficult, but I think that the Ohio Basin, if everybody in the Ohio, it's like picking up a piece of trash. If everyone did a couple of things towards the end of shifting inequity, we could make a big difference. I look forward to working on that too, Jerry.
Thank you, Risa. Perry?
Well, I think Risa stole my thunder. I agree with what you just said. I'd like to see all of us take steps toward improving equity across the basin, and where possible to bring the arts and music into that effort.
Russ, do you have anything else to say?
I feel what we need to recognize is as we break into these strategies and for some of the goals and objectives, that we need to kind of keep in mind what we can do in the short term, the midterm, the long term. And a lot of those long-term goals, they're not even going to be in our generation. And if we look at similar efforts elsewhere, this is a multi-generational endeavor to try to do what we're hopefully with our meet our goals. It's not going to happen just with us. So, but unlike Risa, I mark down no and everything. So I'm under-promising what I'm going to do. So if I do anything, I'm overachieving. But I've been involved with Perry, now the coordinator for the Salt River Watershed Watch. I've been involved with them for 22 years. Doesn't mean we've cleaned up all of our streams in Kentucky. I've been involved in environmental justice and here in Louisville for 23 years. Doesn't mean we've or now have no injustice here in Louisville, but we've laid some foundations for improving water quality. We've laid foundations for improving environmental justice. And if we can do that, then all of us have enough karma to make it to the next level.
Thank you very much, Russ. Perry, you're the last on the agenda here. Any final comments?
Again, just to say thank you. What an amazing group. I hope that ORBA has provided a framework to this group that gives you the flexibility to go make some things happen. I think as a group you can. I would say use it as a framework. And you are the experts. And so feel free to exercise your expertise to make these things happen.
Thank you very much. It was a good meeting, and I look forward to the next 2 years. I sent out the Zoom call. URL is the same for the 4th Tuesday of every month. And if people want to come on down to Louisville for the festival or for the Ohio River celebration, we'd love to have you, but stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye.